Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Cal. It's coming to you on the 4th of April, 2024, episode 615. Today's episode will be entitled Truth, Stranger Than Fiction. Before we get into that, let me remind you the best way that you can help me, help you, help the Republic as it is to like, share, and subscribe to this program. Follow me on your social media of choice. The subscriptions matter. The gremlins of the social media companies have not been kind. So that subscription, that follow makes all the difference in the world. And as I've said, I have a page in the group over at Facebook. I do drop in over at MeWe, and I am a pro at Gab. So without further ado, here we go. All right. So I know that I did most of the week's episodes before I really wanted to spend any time addressing this, but apparently Resurrection Day, commonly known as Easter, is now going to be about mentally ill people. Now, only in a upside-down clown world would you celebrate somebody that wants to mutilate themselves, destroy their ability to reproduce, which actually, as things go, that's probably not the worst side effect for society, that there won't be more of them, but they are actively recruiting, celebrating people destroying themselves and the mental illness, rather than address that issue, rather than actually legitimately help folks that clearly need help. No, we're going to encourage them and push them further off the cliff faster. Only in the clown world can we imagine this. So when you look at fiction, there are very few things that I can imagine to be stranger than that. But that's where we are at. And it's really simple and easy to blame, leftist progressives. It's simplistic to put it on Biden, but we wouldn't have gotten here if a whole lot of people wouldn't have fallen asleep at the switch. If a whole lot of people wouldn't have just disregarded their responsibilities, their duties as good people, as parents, as church members, as, civic leaders. How we got to this point, I would like to say it's a mystery, but it's really kind of known. We've watched this play out, and it's because we kept compromising. We kept saying that, well, it's okay. And, and the truth of the matter is, as a young person and coming out of a libertarian background, I was often able to just write it off as, hey, you do you. I'm going to accept it. That's what you want to do with yourself. I'm not going to interfere. It's wrong. I don't see any reason to justify what you're doing, but hey, if you want to go do that to yourself, I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to stop you. And for a long time, we were able to make peace with that. We could acknowledge that seemed to be working. But it's not anymore because, well, when you can't reproduce, you have to recruit. And unfortunately, most of the recruitment is now targeted at the people that are most vulnerable. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go after the young children. Let's go after kids that just don't know any better. People that are not fully developed. They might, in fact, be open to the idea that we create the suggestion that they're not normal, that something's not right with them, and the way they fix it is to start lopping off body parts or taking hormones or just plain pretending to be something they're not, rather than encourage them to be welcoming of who they are and what they are and in their natural birth way. No, we can change this. We can fix this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot change chromosomes. You cannot, change an XY to be an XX or vice versa. And yes, I know there are genetic anomalies that occur and, stranger things really can happen. But by and large, it's a tiny percentage of the general population that are affected by that. And we all have compassion and we all are realistic that some folks, things happen that are way beyond their control, and we're kind and generous. Now, maybe not as young kids. I mean, a lot of us were rotten when we were in grade school and middle school, but as you get older and you recognize that, life's not kind to everybody, you learn to get past that. But again, only in the clown world that we're in do we actually invert everything and put it on its head, which then kind of reminds me about this whole DEI process, right? I've talked about this in the past, the acronym DIE, if you will. Diversion, exclusion, and inversion. We're going to divert your attention. We're going to exclude you from having any say in this matter, and then we're going to invert the process. We're going to tell you right is wrong and wrong is right. I mean, it just sounds like a recipe for disaster to me, but that's where we're at. And while we're on that topic of where we're at, keeping in mind that the idea that truth is stranger than fiction, we actually have a group of people that apparently are very influential in our government. And not just our government, but in our communities, in our media organizations. And they are actively cheering on not one war, not two wars, but multiple wars. No, and when the wars aren't bloody enough, aren't costly enough, no, that we're going to take on more. Now, I have heard other people refer to these situations as the world being run by bloodthirsty vampires, and I find myself beside myself. I'm not sure how to dismiss that, because I don't see a better explanation as to why somebody would actively encourage one country to go to war with another. And lots of people die, lots of things get blown up, lots of people lose out. Now, yes, maybe that sounds great if you own, shares in Raytheon, but the rest of us, we don't look forward to the idea of watching young men and women, mostly men, go off to get maimed, disfigured, have their lives destroyed, come home, broken, and not able to function in society. And then when they get home, rather than celebrating these guys and the ladies, we punish them. We look for ways to take away their rights. We look at ways to make them very uncomfortable, and we don't invest in them. No. We're going to invest in mentally ill people that want to pretend they're one sex that they're not, but the people that actually went over and served their country and cared enough for their families, their friends, and their communities to make that ultimate sacrifice potentially, they come home damaged, and we just kick them to the curb. We dismiss them. We're not willing to invest. Now, look, this sounds like a real easy talking point from the right, but the right is just as guilty of doing this as the left. And we do it in different ways. We dismiss it. We don't take care to determine whether or not these are actually legitimate things that we're getting involved with. Are there any other options, I guess is the way I should phrase that? Is there anything else we could be doing short of doing this? We were all surprised, a year or two ago to find out that we actually had people in Syria. Well, why in God's green earth are we in Syria? I mean, I already am aware of, 150 plus military bases we have across the world, and that we have bases in many, many, many countries in all the continents. And at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, why? I mean, the emperor has no clothes. We're broke. We've spent ourselves into oblivion. Yet we feel like if we just throw some more military bases up somewhere, we're going to fix something. We're going to make something better. But the reality is, more often than not, it actually creates more problems than it solves. Again, only in the upside down clown world do we live in that we think this is a good thing. Do we believe this truth that is somehow making things better? I don't buy it. I'm not sure that you're buying it either, but that's where we're at. That's the world we live in. So I just, going to change gears here. Saw a notification come across. I want to say it was on Wednesday, but I might have seen it on Tuesday, indicating that, quote, Texas is fighting back. Yes, we're going to put up some barbed wire in El Paso. Now, as a reminder, the outgoing chairman of the Texas Republican Party has basically stated there's no way you're going to get independence if you're not even willing to stand up to a federal court. There's no way you're going to be able to stand on your feet as an independent nation if you're not willing to tell somebody else, yeah, that's all well and good. You made your opinion known, but we're not going to obey it. We're not going to follow it. And while I maybe didn't appreciate it at the time, the wisdom behind that seems to get brighter or more pronounced every day when we've got photo ops going on the border, and we've got people pretending to do something about it. But the fact of the matter is we have millions of people that have crossed over that we don't know who they are. We don't know where they've gone. We don't know what they're up to. We have no means of actually dealing with them. But God forbid you went down the tollway and didn't pay your toll with a toll tag. They'll hunt you down, and they're going to get their $60 out of you or whatever it is that you owe. But hey, if you want to smuggle children or fentanyl or whatever, yeah, that's not all that important. Well, again, only in the clown world that we live in, where truth is truly stranger than fiction, do we allow for this stuff to go on. We have evidence. We have people coming out and speaking on the issue where we have brothels, we have child trafficking, we have prostitution in public neighborhoods, right? Private homes in public neighborhoods. That's the way I want to phrase that. And this stuff goes on, and yet nothing gets done. Nothing changes. And I almost wonder if there's some kind of payoff somewhere. If there's something going on that why they tolerate this. I can't believe that our government, our law enforcement, who basically has eyes and ears on everything that is being done, including this show, but they just don't care and they don't do anything about it, and it's tolerated. And again, in the crazy upside down world where we're hunting down people that took an unauthorized tour of the Capitol 3 years after the fact and locking them up without giving them their lawyers, yes, we're going to do that. But no, we're not going to worry about the fact that children are being exploited. We're not going to worry about the fact that all sorts of nasty things are going on. We just turn a blind eye to that. Again, only in a world where we have the upside down nonsense going on, aka clown world, does this stuff going on. Again, the world living in a fiction that is far stranger than you can imagine, because it is in fact truth. We dusted on April Fool's Day on Monday, and I can't help but thinking at some point we're going to have to acknowledge that our nation is run by fools. At some point we have to, come to grips with the idea that the people that have allowed them, the people that we have allowed to be in charge, the people that we gave the reins of our government and our nation over to, really and truly are not the best and the brightest. They're really, truly not looking out for the greater good. They're really, truly not doing anything to protect us or to reinforce our liberties. They are, in fact, the boot upon our neck. And unfortunately for us, the sad realization is it doesn't matter if they're the right boot or the left boot, because that boot is still on your neck, and we just sit there and we take it. Going back to what, the outgoing chairman, Matt Rinaldi, had to say about this, again, if you're not willing to push back, if you're not willing to ignore a court order, how are you ever going to act as an independent sovereign nation? So if that's the case, if that's the world we live in, it reminds me of so many different atrocities and terrible things that have happened in our country, and we, quote-unquote conservatives, have sat by and watched it happen. We've done nothing. Yeah, okay, fine, I get it. You don't like those people, or those people are kind of icky, or they violated some law that somebody determined was necessary to go execute a bunch of them. But we did nothing. We didn't even protest. We said nothing. There was bigger, more elaborate protests for a guy that beat up somebody when he got into an altercation for selling loose cigarettes. Now, he ultimately lost his life because he thought he could go beat up a cop. There was more pushback on that than a whole bunch of people that got mowed down in the 90s in Waco, Texas. There is just such a high toleration of tyranny that I have my doubts that we're ever going to fix these problems. So when we look at the courts and what they're doing now, and they're punishing Orange Man, right? It's so important that we prevent the former president from being the president again, because it will end democracy. The world's going to come crashing to a halt because the wrong person got elected. Well, I got to tell you, I believe right now we have the wrong person serving or pretending to be the president. So the courts seem far more interested in the lawfare and the punishing the bad man and trying to bankrupt him, run him off. And look, if they can get away with doing this to the former president, if they can get away with doing this to formerly high-placed people within our own government and our own country, what are they going to do to you? Has anybody considered that if this is tolerated and this is accepted as normal, that there aren't going to be stronger and harsher consequences for we the people? Now look, I know there's some good center-left people out there. Some of them got to be looking at this and wondering what in the world is going on. How in the world are we going to tolerate this? Clearly there's no legitimate reason for the things going on that are going on. And yes, I know, look, I'm sure we can go pick apart everything we want about the Donald's life. That's fine. But really, Really? A $500 million bond for a bogus lawsuit? And it's being appealed? And that was tolerated? That was somehow acceptable? And then the judge that stepped in to quote unquote fix it still left the bond at $146 million or whatever crazy number it was? Really? Give me a break. I don't, first of all, I don't believe anything happened that is worth $1 million, much less $140 million. And even if I were willing to believe that, he hasn't actually been convicted yet. And it certainly wasn't a jury of his peers that was unbiased. And again, keep in mind, if they can do this to a former president, if they can do this to a very rich, powerful man, what are they going to do to you when they decide to come after you? So you have to think really hard and long of whether or not this is the clown world that you signed up for. Keep it in mind, they're doing things right now in Canada that are straight out of Minority Report. Do you really want to live in a world where you can be arrested and convicted without ever having committed a crime? Do you want to live in a world where you have to guard your every thought, everything that you look at, everything that you might consider? Is that a world that you really want to live in? Is that something you want for your children? Now, look, I know there's a whole lot of people out there, they're afraid. They don't want to have children, or quite frankly, they don't like children. But fine. If not for you, if not for your children, how about your neighbor? How about your extended family? How about, I don't know, somebody that you love outside of your extended family? I don't know. Find a reason to care. Find a reason to pay attention. Find a reason to be involved. You sit there, you watch this happen, and we're being told to cheer on the smear campaign. We're told to cheer on people that largely did nothing to justify anything, keeping in mind in the exact same summer, or the same year, I should say, that all this went down, we had the Summer of Love, where cities were actually being torched. Things were being vandalized. Things were being stolen. They go after the police station. Nothing happened to those people. In fact, the current sitting vice president helped raise money to get those people out on bail, but then other people, again, those that took the unauthorized tour and some that, maybe crossed the line here or there, no, they're thrown in solitary confinement for multiple years, but nobody gives a rat about them. Is this the world you want to live in? Is this where we're going? And again, who would have thought this was the case? As little as, 4 years ago, how many of us would have considered that this is the world that we're living in? And when I say truth is stranger than fiction, you just kind of look out your own window. You put on the TV for 5 minutes. Speaking of putting on your TV, has anybody found it weird that some kind of rap star, Sean Combs, got himself in trouble for something that, we've been talking about a guy that didn't kill himself was involved in that same situation, and yet that guy's been wandering around. You mean to tell me in the panopticon that we live in today, nobody knew this? Nobody was aware of what was going on, and somehow he just kind of got away with it? I'm suggesting perhaps that there's something else going on there. And it just so happens that, other events happen to take your mind off of what went on there, to distract us. Now, again, I've talked about this, and I'm going to just spend a minute or two talking about this one more time. We're under attack on multiple fronts from multiple organizations or people. We have our enemies within and we have our enemies without. But we can only pretend to ignore them for so long before it's going to catch up to us. We can only choose to make nothing of it and pretend that all is well for so long before you cannot ignore it any longer. So you've got our resident and his messed up family bilking the American people. Nothing happens. You've got AT&T that gets hacked, goes down. You've got one of the healthcare providers gets hacked, goes down. You've got a ship that just happens to run into something, inexplicably losing power twice in like 2 or 3 minutes. And then, oh, by the way, multi-million-dollar ships with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cargo, they don't actually monitor what's going on there. I mean, that's what they're telling us. I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. But something doesn't smell right. Something doesn't look right. And because I say that, because I ask for an investigation, because I want people to consider it. What else is going on there? Is there a possibility that something bad happened, or somebody had their thumb on the scale, as it were? Well, you're a conspiracy theorist. You can't be trusted. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a crack. Really? So I'm a crackpot because I look at something and it doesn't look right and I ask somebody to investigate? Okay. This is the same world that we live in, that up is down, down is up, right is wrong, and wrong is right. But because I want to question what happened here, well, clearly I'm wrong. Clearly I don't know what's going on here. Again, only in the clown world that we live in would something like that be allowed to stand. I mean, if for no other reason, I don't know, somebody that's shipping on that cargo ship might want to know what happened, because they're going to have a massive expense they're going to be incurred from the delay and possible lack of delivery of whatever materials were on that ship. I would certainly want to know, if I was a company that paid that ship to deliver my goods to me, what happened there. I would want an explanation. I would want to know. If I'm the insurance carrier, I darn sure want to know, because that's a massive payout that insurance carrier is going to have to pay out. Before they pay out, I'm fairly certain they would like to know the why and the wherefore. So I find it very interesting that the FedGov has decided that they're going to pay for everything, when really and truly they should not have to. It is not our responsibility. You know, this whole business of the private partnership, right? The private-public partnership. Well, I can say that 3 times fast. You know, whereupon the private companies get to keep the profits and the public gets to eat the losses. Yeah, that sounds like a really good deal. We should sign up for more of that. So keep that in mind. Everything that happens and somebody dares to question it or wants more information, perhaps they're not the one that's wrong. Perhaps they're not the wrong entity. Perhaps they ought to be given a little bit of credence. You know, back in the day, you had some people that worked at a newspaper out of Washington. They investigated something that happened, and they got themselves some prizes. They became lionized people. They had a movie or 2 made about them, and they're celebrated figures. And what they were doing was conspiracy theory. How is anything different now? We look at the same kinds of things, and we see something is going on there, and we're just looking for a proper explanation. But we're told to dismiss it, not to see anything here. Don't worry, good citizen, turn your head. There's nothing going on you need to be concerned about. Well, I'm here to tell you, based upon the other 4 things that I've touched on, I'm not confident in that person's assertion. I'm not confident that that person's qualified to be telling me to not look at something when it clearly seems out of sort. And there's all sorts of evidence in the world around us right here, right now, that things are not as they should be. So no, I'm not going to not pay attention. No, I'm not going to just shut up and go away. No, I'm not going to pretend there's nothing to see here. No, I'm asking you, dear listener, consider going forward. Investigate everything that you can. We have clear evidence over the last 4 years the media lies to us. Government entities lie to us. Both of them pay informants to come and lie to us. Pretty much everything that we hear on the news or in the media in general is a lie of some shape or form. We're being massaged and manipulated to accept certain things that clearly are not true. The only thing worse than that is we don't have a good source to go to. We can't know for certain what the truth is when things happen, because everything that we have thrown at us has a vested interest in getting across their part of the story. And I don't care if they're right or left, they're going to tell you something that they think you want to hear, or they're going to posit it in the way that they want you to hear it. They're manipulating us all the time. And once we accept that, once we acknowledge that's the world that we live in, perhaps then we can figure out what's going on. And I've listened to other people, they say, well, I listen to the news on the left, I listen to the news on the right, and I figure if I overlap them, the thing in the middle is the thing that's probably most accurate. Well, guess what? I think they already know that. I think that's what they're actually doing. They're giving a slanted story one way and a slanted story the other way, and the stuff in the middle that overlaps, they know that most people are going to accept some of that or most of that as being true. But what if that's actually the ultimate goal? What if that's what they're trying to do? What if that's how they're trying to push their agenda and get people to accept certain things? Now, I don't think I'm asking for too much here. I don't think that I'm taking too giant of a leap here when I tell you that, yes, we live in a world that is stranger than fiction. Everybody was worried about those dystopian novels. And look, I'm a big fan of dystopian novels, but the world we live in right now, here and today, has aspects and, quite frankly, agendas that directly come out of each one of those dystopian novels. That is the world we live in today. At a certain point, you have to decide, are we going to be the confessing church? Are we going to say truth is truth? And guess what? The government's wrong, or our leader's wrong, and we're going to continue to do what we know to be right? Or are we going to just go along to get along and watch people get, quite frankly, killed, locked up, or otherwise destroyed? I'm not comfortable with that. And if it will be the last thing I do, I'm going to be standing up somewhere, speaking the truth as I understand it. Even if I'm speaking to a wall, that's what my goal is. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be the last man standing. And I'm encouraging you, dear listener, gin up enough courage, understand the truth enough that you feel comfortable and confident enough to do that. We can't all be everything. We can't all be everywhere. And I'm no longer much of a military or physical threat, but I've got a big mouth and I know how to use it. Find your best weapon and put it to good use. Of course, metaphorically speaking, because we would never, ever encourage people to do violence or break the law. And with that, this has been According to Callus. And as always, I will see you on the other side.